Well, kick back and enjoy a nice tall glass of Chihuahua piss. It's Filmshake. I'm Jordan.
And this is Nick.
And we are the 90s Movies Podcast. Welcome back for episode 68. And today we're talking about 1998's Dirty Work. Nick, I'm back.
It's good to have you back, buddy. And I'm so excited to be talking this movie with you.
Me too, man. I will get into the origin of my viewing experience with this movie. But yeah, just wanted to say thank you to Chaz, who was on last episode for Jurassic Park, who was guesting / I guess my clone or something, my frog DNA clone or whatever y'all came up with. But yeah, good job on that, guys. That was a fun episode. So hope everybody enjoyed that. But yes, this episode, one of our favorites, obviously going into this just like fully aware that we probably both love this movie. Hopefully still both love this movie so many years later. But first we have to talk about the punishment movie that I guess you or Chaz or somebody gave us that ties into this, which is 2000's Screwed. So Nick, did you watch this with me?
I did watch it, and it is my fault.
Nice.
Chaz did say he had seen this, but this was my pick for the punishment.
Okay, it was your fault.
Yes.
Screwed, a.k.a. Ball Busted, which was like the original title. Apparently, MGM was going to produce this after Dirty Work, but after Dirty Work didn't do so well at the box office, they dropped it, and Universal picked it up. And Nick, I don't know if this comes at a surprise or not, because this is a very poorly rated movie, but I kind of love Screwed.
Oh, that's why I love doing this podcast with you. I knew you were going to love this stupid-ass movie, Jordan.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's my kind of movie. I mean, all right, it's Norm Macdonald, Dave Chappelle. You got Danny DeVito in there as like the creepiest morgue employee, whatever their title is. Oh, you got our boy Lockton Monroe as one of the police officers who was in Dead Man on Campus. He was Chip. You got George Jefferson himself. You got Sherman Hemsley as a character named Chip. And then Elaine Stritch as this crabby old bitch of a woman who is so funny in this. I thought some of her line readings were so funny. It's a madcap plot of just bumbling idiots, and it just gets stupider and stupider as they try and get out of trouble, and they just end up in more and more trouble throughout this whole thing. Man, this is my kind of movie. Did you not love this? Did you just think this was stupid?
It's so stupid. God, it's so stupid.
It's so funny, though.
I'll talk about my love for Norm Macdonald when we talk about our main film. As much as I love Norm, there were parts of this I did enjoy. It's just so dumb. It's a very dumb movie. It's poorly structured. There are parts of it where I definitely started to zone out. Everything with Danny DeVito, man, I love DeVito, but he can go to the most disgusting, grossest, most foul places. I don't think there's an actor in our lifetimes who can be as disgusting as Danny DeVito can. And he is so nasty here, just mixing body parts.
Right. It's so perfect for this part, though. He was like the perfect casting for this, because you meet him in this morgue where he's like suctioning out someone's colon, and he starts showing them all the different things that he's found inside people. None of that had to be scripted, right? Or like very roughly scripted, because he's just going off on like, ooh, I found this clicker in this person's body. Like, oh, honey, where's the clicker? Oh, I don't know. It's inside me. And he's just like so stupid, just going through all these objects. But I don't know. That was a standout moment for me, for sure.
I did like the randomness where he's like heading up the Hawaii Five-0 fan club or something.
Right. What was it? The Jack Lord fan club or something like that. Yeah.
It's so weird.
So the basic plot is Norm Macdonald is a chauffeur / just house servant for this evil lady who runs a bakery factory. Miss Cross. Is it Miss Cross?
Miss Croc. Virginia Croc.
Virginia Croc. Okay. Like Crockpot. So he's just this chauffeur for this evil old lady. He's been working for her forever, and she treats him like crap. And Dave Chappelle runs like a chicken place. It was like Rusty's Juicy Chicken Hole is the name of the restaurant, which he has on the side of his like beat up ass van, which is, I don't know, it's so dumb, but it's so good. It's the smart dumb, Nick. It's the smart dumb, because I just really found a lot of this really funny. But they decide to kidnap her dog Muffin, who Miss Croc loves, and they're going to ransom Muffin for $1 million. But in the midst of kidnapping the dog bites Norm's hand so bad, and he's just screaming bloody murder as blood is flying all over the house, that the next day the dog ends up back in the house because they're so bad at kidnapping, it just escapes from their van. And the police think that Norm Macdonald has been kidnapped and ransomed, and it just goes on from there. Just like they're trying to get out of this whole madcap scheme that they've come up with, but it just gets worse and worse, where they're hiring Danny DeVito at some point to fake a dead body to look like Norm Macdonald, but he instead uses like an old man little person that looks nothing like him, and the police end up thinking this is the kidnapper somehow. I don't know. It's so ridiculous, but I don't know. I kind of loved every minute of it, honestly.
There were two parts I laughed so hard I had to pause it, and I was really tearing up, crying. Yeah. And it's really the best aspect of the movie, kind of loops into what these two moments do. The first you already mentioned, when he kidnaps this dog, it's real dumb at first, right? He's got like a weenie on a hot dog weenie on a fishing hook, and he's like trying to reel the dog in with it. It's so stupid, and it accidentally goes in her denture cup for a minute. Yeah. And then he just gives up on it. And I love how they're talking about how her hearing is really good and she's a light sleeper, and they're basically like setting off a nuclear bomb in her house and she doesn't wake up. But he finally grabs the dog, and you think like, okay, that was all dumb and this, but kind of funny, and the scene's over. But no, it bites him, and then it just keeps escalating, and then the blood spray.
Yeah,
I think this movie is PG-13. I wasn't expecting that much blood, and it's just a geyser that comes from out of nowhere, and his scream is so over the top. He's in so much pain. It's like he's being circumcised without medication.
He's flinging this dog around as it just like grips onto his hand like the jaws of death or something. He's like smashing the dog on the table, like trying to get it off his hand, but it just won't let go.
Right.
Yeah, and then the blood splatters over the painting of Miss Croc on the wall. That whole scene is hilarious.
I thought he was going to kill the dog. Like he was going to accidentally hit it into the wall and it was going to die, but that's not what happens. The dog makes it through, but my second favorite part, again, it's just extreme violence against poor Norm, because after all the dumb schemes that they do, he finally gets this briefcase full of money. It's like, what, $10 million in the briefcase?
$5 million.
$5 million. With inflation, it's like $100 million.
Yeah, yeah.
He and Chappelle are going to live all their dreams, and he's walking through the park at night with it, and he gets mugged by two children.
And one of the children stab him in the leg, and he's like, ah! And then they tase him, and they're like, tase him, or shock him, or whatever they say.
Whenever the kids come and are like, what's in the case? Which got in there, huh? Like, that's funny, and it seems dumb, and it's kind of funny. But then, again, it's the escalation, just like the blood spray from before, where the kid pulls the knife out and shanks him. It's like, what? What on earth?
And there's little details too, even leading up to that scene, where he calls Miss Croc as she's like on the way to deliver the money somewhere else to like the stadium that they have filled with cops hidden around this stadium that you never see. But he calls her on her car phone, is like, you got to go to the Willsbury Park or whatever. And she's like, oh, that's not safe after dark. And he's like, shut up, bitch. He just tells her to go there. And then like later when you hear Danny DeVito's address, they figure out where he lives based on they call the number to the Jack Lord fan club through the operator, and they figure out the address, and they're like, that's a shitty part of town. And then like later, one of the detectives he's played by Daniel Benzali, I think is the actor's name. He's really funny in this too. Like, he's just so deadpan and serious amidst all the stupidity. And he hears where the address is, and he's like, does this wincing face where he's just like, ugh. So I don't know. There's little details sprinkled throughout here that I find really amusing.
I'm glad that you like this so much. It didn't quite do it for me the way that it did for you. I didn't hate that I watched it, but parts of it definitely did feel like a punishment in the middle. I think those two big laughs I had, I enjoyed a lot, but I was kind of starting to zone out as the plane kind of spirals and the plot gets more and more complicated. Oh, Sarah Silverman's in this too. She's kind of useless.
Yeah, she's not very well used in this. She's just kind of the girlfriend that it is kind of amusing that they think that Norm has been kidnapped for a while there. So she's starting all these protests at factory for Miss Croc, and they're like boycotting her pies and stuff. And they end up throwing all the pies on one of the delivery vans as it drives by, which is kind of amusing. But yeah, she basically doesn't do much. And he shows up at her place later and he tells her the truth that he really kidnapped himself, and then they have sex, and all this is off screen, of course, but it is just really dumb. I'd say one of the other standout moments for me with Elaine Stritch as Miss Croc is just, like I said, her line readings where she's just like in her brassiere, like her undergarments, as she's looking for this blue hat, as Norm Macdonald busts in on her, like, not nude, but, you know, in her underwear. Then he finally finds the hat and she's like, now get out of here before I stick my foot up your ass. Like she holds out these words in really like awkward, weird ways that are just make it even more funny. Like it's just kind of a throwaway line, but the way she holds it out. And then later as she's in the hospital with the detective and he's telling her something and she goes, who cares? She just holds it out like abnormally long. That just makes it like all the more funny. I don't know.
She is predominantly a theater actress before this, and I think she works some of that technique into the performance, which it is really ridiculous. I particularly enjoyed the twist at the end where you find out the reason that she was so much nicer to Norm's dad, who also worked for her up until his death, whereupon Norm took over and has been working for the last 15 years. You find out the reason that she liked Norm's dad a lot more than Norm is because she got it on with Norm's dad and he just can't live up to that, which is just a really disgusting, stupid twist, but her delivery of it makes it really funny. Of course, his response to it is also funny.
Yeah. And then at the very end, you have her and Danny DeVito getting together, which is just really dumb and stupid. But I love the part too where they're in Danny DeVito's apartment and he's like, oh no, I gotta hide. I'm wanted for tax evasion. Or no, he said I'm wanted for mail fraud. And then he runs up, like he has one of those beds that folds out of the wall. So he like runs up the bed and like jumps inside the wall, and then the bed flies up and like hides him in the wall. And then Dave Chappelle's like, hey man, hey, let me in.
I love Chappelle pawing at the door. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah.
And of course, all the notes from this movie say that his father had just passed away in real life and he really didn't want to be on a movie set. And Norm was the only person who made him laugh, which he's talked about that a lot over the years. If you watch Norm's last special that he did right before he died, Chappelle, there's a little panel afterward and Chappelle even talks about it then. So
I really couldn't tell from Chappelle's performance in this because he just seemed like typical Chappelle. Like there's multiple times where he has the classic damn and he just says that like over and over, like not over and over, but like enough there was like, oh, okay, they're really milking Chappelle's catchphrase, like just that damn. And then later when he's being interrogated by the detective and he's just like all nervous and stuff. That was really good.
Awesome. So what kind of score would you give this movie?
Oh man, it's nothing superb or anything. It is just really stupid, but it did make me laugh out loud a lot. So I think I'd at least give this a 3.5 out of 5.
Nice. Okay. I'm a little lower. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4 out of 10, but I can't deny that I did laugh hard a few times.
Hey, if a movie can make you laugh hard enough to pause it, it's doing something right. If it does that at least twice, then come on.
Right.
It's worth a watch at least, right?
I'd say if you're a fan of Norm or Chappelle, it's worth a watch.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you give it that at least.
I will. But you know what? If you're a fan of Norm Macdonald, you should really be watching 1998's Dirty Work.
That's right. Revenge is a dish best served dirty.
Was that a tagline for the film, or did you just make that up?
That is a tagline I saw on IMDb that was for this film. There's quite a few other taglines, but that was my favorite one.
Right on. Well, this was your pick. This is a film I had seen before, but it had been 24 years. I saw it right after it came out on video, and I never saw it again until now, Jordan. Why did we watch this movie?
I just have always loved this. I remember, I think I was in probably the 7th or 8th grade when this was coming out. I remember seeing the previews and being really excited to see this in the theater. This was like the one movie I wanted to see that summer. Most anticipated thing for me. For whatever reason, I just thought the trailer looked really funny. And I guess I probably liked Norm Macdonald and like everybody involved from Saturday Night Live. But I remember going on a trip with my family to California, and the whole time I'm just thinking like, maybe we can go see Dirty Work. Maybe we can go see Dirty Work, slip this in some way. And we never did, and I missed it. And I don't think I ever, it was only in the theater for like a couple of weeks or something. It didn't do well. So I missed my chance of seeing it. And so then, I'm waiting for like however long it was back then, like 6 months to a year or something for it to come out on video. Finally see it on video. I think I even just like bought it on video when it came out without even having seen it, and just, immediately loved it. Favorite of mine growing up. So yeah, this has always had a near and dear place in my heart, probably because of that anticipation, like the build up to finally see it. And then it was as funny as it is. It just was very satisfying. So always loved this. There's just lines in it, just similar to, my affinity for Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, some of that early Billy Madison stuff. This has a similar producer to Billy Madison. Fun tie-in. You've got a little cameo from Adam Sandler in here. You've got Chris Farley. You've got so many different just like random characters thrown in. So it's just like right up my alley in that whole wheelhouse of dumb humor. So I appreciate Dirty Work a lot.
Nice. For me, the 90s, I think there are two people who had the largest effect on my humor as far as being formative influences on what I think is funny. The first would be early to mid 90s Conan O'Brien. And then the second would be Norm Macdonald, for sure. Yeah. Been a huge fan of him since the 90s. A lot of people, when he passed away, were really bummed out. Usually when a celebrity dies and people are like, that one hit me really hard. I don't know, man. Like most actors, the reason they're doing that is because they're really narcissistic and egocentric. Their brains aren't wired like ours are. Whenever they die, it's sad to me, but it's like, you know what? I'm sad when like my friends and family die,
right? Which
I've lost a lot of them, and that really affected me. When a celebrity that I've never met who would not care about me dies, it doesn't have that big effect. But when Norm Macdonald died, that was rough. That made me a lot of sad because it's like this guy has consistently made me laugh since I've been a teenager, and now just gonna have to go back to the old stuff. And that's why I'm really, really glad that he made the movie Dirty Work in 1998, Jordan.
Yes.
Because I love this movie. I loved it. Well, I'd say I liked it a good bit in 1998. There were some things I didn't know what to think about when I watched it then. Watching it now, I love this movie so much. And I've watched it multiple times to prep. I loved it more the more I watched it.
That's great.
And I can't wait to talk about it, Jordan.
This was directed by Bob Saget, which I didn't think I ever realized growing up. This was directed by Danny Full House Bob Saget, and which was a strange, this is his debut feature film. He directed like some other TV movie stuff and some other, lower profile stuff. This is the only thing that I would really recognize in his filmography, but obviously he has probably going forward from here connection with Norm Macdonald, Dave Chappelle. I always think of him in Half Baked. He has a little cameo.
Marijuana is not a drug. I used to suck dick for coke. I seen him. Now that's an addiction, man.
I seen him. But yeah, that always stands out to me. It's like, wait, that's Bob Saget. Like, he's not supposed to talk about sucking dick for coke. But yeah, obviously he has a much dirtier mind than you would anticipate from him being like the wholesome dad on Full House. And I think that was Norm Macdonald's reaction when the producer was like, hey, we got Bob Saget direct. And he's like, wait, what? But obviously it turned out well. for this movie. Just fit hand in hand, I think.
Yes, I remember sometime in the 90s, somebody told me that Bob Saget was the opposite of his TV dad persona as a comedian, and that he was actually really, really, really foul. Not just foul-mouthed, foul. And I think I saw maybe an HBO special or something that he did in the 90s, and I was like, geez, that's too much. That's too dark.
Right.
You get that here. I mean, there were definitely multiple incest jokes here. Norm Macdonald's character gets raped halfway through the movie, and it's played for laughs.
Right.
The humor here is really dark, and this film was meant to be rated R. They filmed it as a rated R film, and then the studio said, nah, it should be PG-13. A rated R movie's not going to make any money in the comedy genre. And then Something About Mary came out a few months later and was an enormous financial success, which is kind of a bummer. But then again, there's something about what they have to do to make this movie PG-13 that almost makes it funnier in a way.
I would be really curious to see the R-rated cut, but I'm kind of with you there. I think it is just kind of perfect the way it is. I can't imagine it being any different, but at the same time, you know, you've got to have that curiosity. Like, what would have this, you know, could this have been even funnier? Like, what would this have been like if they really would have had their way with it? But apparently I was reading Bob Saget, before Norm Macdonald died, he had written a sequel to this, and they had the money for it, and Norm was on board. They were going to film the sequel, and then Norm died. And then Bob Saget was trying to put together some of the deleted footage, try and kind of put together a rated R cut, like in memorial to Norm. And he was having trouble finding the deleted footage, and he died like, a few months later too. So it's just kind of crazy. Maybe this will just be the only version we ever see.
I really wish we could have got that sequel, man. And I wish he could have found the footage, because even though I feel like this feels best as a PG-13 film, just knowing that there's more footage of this, there's more footage of Norm out there, that would be great. And man, the crazy thing, I remember right after Bob Saget died, someone showed a set photo of Bob Saget, Norm Macdonald, and Artie Lang all standing side by side. And the caption was, in 1998, who would bet that Artie Lang would live the longest of these three people?
Right.
If listeners don't know, Artie Lang, not in the greatest physical shape, and has had a huge drug problem that would kill most people. 99.9% of the people on Earth who have done as many drugs as Artie Lang has in his life would be dead, but he is still alive. He's supposed to be sober now for quite a while. I hope he is.
That's good. Yeah,
but
so.
He's the only one that's alive out of these three. It's crazy. And Chris Farley is also, I think, in the picture too.
Along with Chris Farley. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
Nuts.
Well, yes. So, written by Norm, Fred Wolf, Frank Sebastiano, guy that Norm worked with on Saturday Night Live. But I was reading, apparently based on a Roald Dahl short story called Vengeance is Mine Incorporated. I've never heard of this short story. I don't know how factually true that is. Are you familiar with that at all?
I was going to read it to prep if I could just get it for free, but I couldn't, so I didn't. I did read a synopsis of it. I mean, it's pretty loosely based. It's okay. Loosely based.
So I guess to get into the basic plot of this is they start a revenge for hire business to try and get some money to help save their dad. I mean, it's Sam, played by Artie Lang's dad. Pops is his name. Played by Jack Warden, the legendary Jack Warden, just so hilarious in this. But he reveals to Norm that he is also his dad, that he, quote unquote, boned his mom as well, and has like a picture of this in his locket for some reason. But they need $50,000 for a heart transplant. Chevy Chase is their doctor, who has like lots of gambling debts, and these bookies are going to break his legs or kill him if he doesn't get him this money. So this starts the whole revenge for hire business where, they try working various different jobs to raise the money, and none of that works out, and eventually stumble upon their revenge for hire business.
I love how this film starts off a lot like Tommy Boy, and Fred Wolf also co-wrote Tommy Boy.
Right.
We get the brief flashback to open the film of young Norm as a kid, where he's getting beat up, and there's a gag throughout the movie where he gets thrown out of places where literally
thrown into a dumpster, yeah, or thrown out of places. Yes, it's like my favorite gag of this whole movie.
Just gets thrown into a dumpster, bangs against the wall of the dumpster, and falls in. It's so great. But the pranks that he plays when he's a kid, to the original dirty work he does to get revenge on people. How awesome is the crossing guard scene? And again, this is very Bob Saget-esque.
Right.
The crossing guard is grabbing all the kids' butts, all the children's butts. So young Norm puts super glue on his butt. So whenever the crossing guard grabs his butt, his hand gets stuck there, and then young Norm starts yelling,
"Hey, look everybody! Crossing guard grabbing 8-year-old's ass over here! Look everybody! Look! Crossing guard grabbing 8-year-old's ass over here!"
He's just screaming that again and again.
That is the standout moment for sure from that early childhood parts. And this is all being very sardonically narrated by Norm Macdonald, which I love his narration in this too, which is just, it's so personable to, I mean, because Mitch is basically Norm Macdonald. There's not like a huge stretch in acting here, right, for Norm. He's basically playing himself, like his same attitude, same persona and everything. So you just get even more Norm in the narration and the voiceover, which is great.
Really, almost every character's dialogue, everything that happens, you can hear Norm saying it. It's all phrased in the way that Norm Macdonald would phrase something.
Except for maybe like Sam or Pops. I don't know. They're very much their own people for sure. But
I'll give you that, yeah.
There's a lot of Norm throughout this.
I love his girlfriend throwing all his stuff out, and he sees this guy walking down the street with his shirt, and he tells the guy, "Hey, that's my shirt." So the guy starts to take off the shirt to give it back to him. And you mentioned smart dumb for screwed before. I'd say that this is the same amount as dumb, but way, way smarter, which smart dumb is my favorite type of humor. I mean, I said, mid-90s Conan before. Conan O'Brien's a guy that got straight A's at Harvard, but is like willing to look like he's the stupidest person on earth and be extremely self-deprecating in a way that only a smart person could do. Right. And this guy has his shirt, and he starts to take his shirt off, and this guy is the hairiest man who ever lived, to a very disgusting degree. And Norm just says a line that is stupid. It's a really dumb line, and it should not work. But he says,
Here you go.
No, that's all right. I was talking to somebody else that's different than you.
No, I love his reaction too. Where he's like, "Ah!" Like that Norm screech where he's just like, "Ah!"
Right. And most other people saying that line, it would just be like, man, that's not that great. But him saying the line, it's the best thing.
Yeah. It's just like he brings an awkward nervousness to a lot of this movie, which just works really well. And just, I don't know, it's like he's smart, he's very condescending to a lot of the characters, but at the same time, he's getting beat up a lot. He's being thrown out a window. He's been thrown in a dumpster, so he's willing to, to make himself look humiliated too, which is great.
Yes, to the highest degree. I also love that basically he is kind of just being himself and not really acting in a way that reminds me of Jerry Seinfeld on the show Seinfeld, which one of my favorite all-time shows. No one would accuse Jerry Seinfeld of being a great actor, but he's great as Jerry Seinfeld on the Seinfeld show, and Norm is great in this movie doing that.
Yes.
Not being Seinfeld, being Norm.
That's a good point. Right, yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely the same kind of vibe where he's just being himself.
Yeah, I love where they point out later on that he has a tell whenever he's lying, but it's almost like a meta commentary on him kind of smirking through his lines, like
That's true. That's true.
Throughout the entire film.
Yeah, every time they ask him something that he's embarrassed by, he's like, "No." But yeah, you're right. He is kind of like smirking the whole time, like throughout most of this movie. So the acting is definitely not great.
I also love that Pops just sits around watching the same aerobics video all day long, the sexy aerobics video.
Yeah.
And they make a comment to him about his impotency that he's dealing with. And he's like, yeah. Again, this is so stupid. It's so damn dumb. But I can see Norm Macdonald coming up with this idea late at night and writing it down. He says, no, it's not working yet, but I'm getting some ideas from Impotent Old Men and Whores magazine. And he holds up a magazine that literally is just like an old man next to a scantily clad woman with the title written on the magazine in a magazine font, Impotent Old Men and Whores. It's amazing.
I love the running gag of this dirty old man Pops and his, bring me some whores. Like, he's like, hey, we've got great news, Pops. Like, oh, did you bring me a whore? It's just like, it just keeps going on and on until the very end where he's like Don Giovanni at the opera they're trying to ruin. And he's like, come here, baby. He's like in his hospital gown.
Well, he's disappointed that the great news that they have for him is that they're going to give him a new heart and he's going to live.
He's like, oh, that's great. That's great. I mean, a horse would have been good too, but
right. And then we have to set up Farley, who is just out of his gourd in this movie. It's his last performance. Good. And it's perfect. If he was going to have a last performance, this is everything that he can do is in his 5 minutes of screen time in this movie, which is thankfully throughout the entire film, not just in one moment.
Right. I have one small moment that is basically just Chris Farley in a nutshell, and it's his introduction in this movie. And this might be, honestly, my favorite Chris Farley performance. I mean, it's a small part, but he brings so much to it. So Norm is sitting at the bar where they all go to, and at one point Norm says, he's talking to the bartender, he's like, well, it could be worse. Could have gotten my nose bitten off by a Saigon whore. And he says it really loud. So Farley, who plays this guy named Jimmy, who's had his nose bitten off by the Saigon whore, is sitting down, the bar. And he's like, you bastard. It's like that classic, just Chris Farley angry yell, just explosive. And then I love how Norm diffuses him so easily. He's just like, oh, I'm just messing with you, Jimmy. I saw you down there. Hey, Manetti, give Jimmy a beer on me. And then Chris Farley just like laughs and shakes his head. He's like, oh, okay, it's all right. It's just the way he responds with like that kind of goofy grin, and he like wags his head. It's just all that right there in that one little moment is Chris Farley in a nutshell. It's just so good.
And Saget does such a great job there because they cut to the back of his head whenever he gets mad at Norm. And he turns slowly to the camera and just this psychotic, harsh blue light. It's so amazing with that gashed up nose.
Right. It's like a very obviously fake, like prosthetic nose, bitten off. It doesn't look great, but it's like, because it doesn't look great, it makes it even funnier.
I've learned in the past few years, and we talked about this with Tommy Boy a lot, that genius can come in many different forms. And I remember back whenever Farley was alive and in his prime, I was kind of disparaging of him because it was like, well, he doesn't really write anything. He just performs things that other people write for him. But then I realized, it takes genius to interpret those things the way that he does and make them so personable and funny. And I think a great example of that is whenever a bar fight breaks out in this scene after his introduction, and he gets really psyched about it, and he wants to play a badass song on the jukebox.
This is like one of my favorite moments ever.
Looks like there's gonna be a brawl. You playing something good?
Hell yeah! Rolling Stones, street fighting man, G7!
You just hit G8.
If you like pina coladas, everybody!
Yes, it's so good. I will randomly just say G7 in that way, just walking through my everyday life, just like G7. The way he enunciates that. Oh,
it's a virtuoso line reading. It's amazing.
It is. And it's just like the random guy standing next to him is like, you gonna play something good for the fight? And he's like, hell yeah. He screams at him in his face. Apparently the actor there didn't know that Chris Farley was just gonna turn and yell hell yeah in his face, and so his shocked look is genuine. I don't know, it's just the funniest thing.
It's amazing. All of his insane crazy high energiness is here, but then like that puppy dog sweetness is all here too. It's everything you want from Chris Farley. So much of this movie just feels like a gift, especially now that so many of the biggest parties involved here have passed away. It's like this gift that they left behind, this document of their skill from the late 90s, Jordan, which I just love it, man.
And then this bar fight, right in the midst of that is also hilarious, where before this we have Sam hitting on this very attractive young woman at the bar. And I love his pickup line is basically like, I live with my dad. And then it just cuts away to Norm, like talking to Jimmy down at the bar or something. It's just that I live with my dad. The question mark in his voice is so funny to me. And then later he's like getting in a fight. The whole fight in the bar starts with the frat guys coming up and trying to mac on this girl too, and she's just so disinterested. She's like, I think y'all should fight over it. And then they start this whole fight. I love Norm's line where he's like, my stupid friend needs me. He's met Kathy at the bar, and they start hitting it off a little bit, and he goes into the fight and he's like, hey, why do you get a pool cue? And then he just gets beat over the back with a pool cue and then thrown out of the window. Like the whole gag of him being thrown out of places. This is the best one because just like shatters the glass of the front of this bar, and he's just laying on the ground. And then he periodically throughout the film, he's pulling out like a little tape recorder for notes to self, and he's like,
Note to self, learn to fight.
so good.
I love his tape recorder gag. And also, you know who else I love, Jordan? I love Traylor Howard as Kathy. I don't know how you felt about this actress back in the day, but I really loved her in this sitcom called Boston Common. She was really great in that. And she was in Two Guys, a Girl, in a Pizza Place. And then she was Jim Carrey's ex in Me, Myself, and Irene. She had like a great little run there in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
She's definitely on my really, really long 90s crush list.
90s crush list.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I love the sweet energy she brings to the movie where, I heard it was like another comedian because, you know, Norm had a son. He was married for a while. And they were just like, you know what? Norm Macdonald has had sex before. Can you imagine that? Because I can't. I can't imagine.
He gets Sarah Silverman in Screwed, and then he gets Traylor Howard in here. I mean, it's like, what is this guy doing?
And they don't ever like really kiss or even barely touch each other in the movie, but they have good chemistry.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like you said, there is a sweetness to this because, yeah, it never gets really like raunchy or trashy or even like super romantic between them. It's just good chemistry, friendliness. Yeah, I love it. I think it really works. And I don't know if that's like intentional here or like, oh, we can't have Norm, a scene of like Norm Macdonald kissing somebody. That's just gonna look weird. Like, I don't know, wouldn't that be strange if you had like a sex scene or a kissing scene even with Norm Macdonald? Like, that would just feel off, right?
I also love that he lords it over her that she is attracted to him, basically.
Yes. I mean, I think that's a part of his charm too, where it's like he has this kind of like cocky condescension.
There's two kinds of people in this world, those who get stomped on and those who do the stomping.
Where'd you come up with that theory?
That famous guy said it. What's his name? Oh, yeah, Jesus. Hi, I'm Mitch.
I love later on whenever she says something like, why am I here? And he's like, I don't know. Oh, yeah, your intense physical attraction to me.
Right.
He's not being sarcastic.
When you have to wonder too, like, wait, why is this girl, why does she keep coming around? Because he does some pretty awful things. Like, he gets her fired from her car dealership job, which is another highlight for me. I always love the actor who plays Anton Phillips. He's in The Office, the American version of The Office.
It's David Kochner.
David Kochner. Yeah, there you go. He always plays this very like schmarmy, like cocky, just, I don't know, arrogant asshole of a guy. He's in the Anchorman films. But yeah, he's this car dealership baron in this movie. And then that they hide all the dead hookers in these cars while they're doing a live TV commercial. And they use this as a little promo for their dirty work business. I always thought that was great. And then she's mad at him later because she's basically gotten fired because he had to close down the business from this commercial that he did. She's like, oh, the little person walks in and saw the commercial and thinks it's awesome. She's like, oh, great. Now you're famous for being a jerk, Mitch. I always thought that was a good line reading.
Isn't it also like strangely believable that she keeps coming back?
In a weird way, yes. Because later they like destroy her grandmother's apartment building. Oh, and we haven't even mentioned Christopher McDonald. I know we're both big fans of his, like from SLC Punk.
The magnificent douche of the 90s.
He's such a good douche. He plays the parts so well, and he's so tongue-in-cheek and so funny and everything. I love him in these roles, like from Shooter McGavin and Happy Gilmore to the dad in SLC Punk. Travis Cole, the real estate baron in this movie, and he's got the little chihuahua. And the whole running gag of like, oh man, I think he's got his thumb up that dog's ass. And Sam is like, he's in the middle of like explaining their plot or whatever. And Sam's like, oh yeah, by the way, he's definitely doing that dog. But anyway.
He's great. Artie Lang too. I guess I should give a little shout out to him here. He's kind of playing the straight man in a way, even though he's funny.
Yeah.
But because he's the guy opposite Norm Macdonald.
He's the fat guy.
Right.
Basically.
But I really like his presence here. He's got like this kind of happy-go-lucky, lovable presence. I don't know. I think he's really good in this film.
I do too. I love the scene where they're on the rooftop discussing their plans. They're standing over the ledge and talking. Norm's talking to him, and then he turns around and like Norm realizes, man, you've been taking a leak this whole time. He's like, yeah. He's just so nonchalant about it. But then later a guy like busts up through the exit door on the roof, and he's like covered in piss, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you, asshole. It's just the amount of piss that he's like drenched in. He's just like totally drenched is so funny.
Also, Norm Macdonald looking at the guy and then saying, that was a hell of a piss.
Right. And then they just run.
All of his line readings are like the most Norm possible too. And the smart, stupid, like this is right after they pull the prank on the frat guys that beat him up. Where they call him, they say that people are impersonating the police to the frat guys. So if some police come, you should beat them up because they're actually thieves who are coming to steal from you. And then he immediately calls the police and says,
Hello, real cops? Yes, I'd like to register a complaint.
Right. The way he says real cops, like it's just for the audience, right? Just it's so stupid, but it's so good. Dumb. But it's actually a pretty clever prank, right? That he pulls on the frat guys, just like setting that whole up. Takes a little bit of ingenuity.
I love where they try to work other jobs before they get on a dirty work and they have the movie theater job.
Oh, so good.
I think this made me cry for an hour and like just have to stop the movie completely.
Yes. This is probably one of my favorite ad libs like ever from Don Rickles when he's riffing on Sam.
So there you are, Tubby. You look like a bucket of lard on a bad day. You baby gorilla. Why don't you work a zoo and stop bothering people? Got a call yesterday from Baskin Robbins. They said that they're down to only 5 flavors. You're swelling up as I talk to you.
I also like that he says all the funny stuff to Artie Lang, and then when he gets to Norm, it's just mean. Like, it's not even like a funny insult. He's like, you have the personality of a moth.
Right.
It's just hateful.
Right. Apparently, they spent like a whole day just filming Don Rickles' riff, and Bob Saget got in trouble with the studio because they spent like a week's worth of their salary on just like a day's worth of him riffing. And at one point, he was just making fun of Norm Macdonald himself. He wasn't even making fun of him in character. He was just like riffing on Norm Macdonald.
Yes. But that's not actually the part that made me laugh so hard. The part that made me laugh so hard is the prank that they play on Don Rickles, where the movie is supposed to be Men in Black, and they switch the reel out for a gay porn film called Men in Black Who Like to Have Sex with Each Other. And the line readings, you don't see any of it. And Norm and Artie cover their eyes after they put the reel on. But the line readings and the lines themselves are so obviously Norm Macdonald lines because you just hear the Men in Black Who Like to Have Sex with Each Other say,
an alien. Yeah, we better have sex with each other.
That's so good.
And then the audience stampedes out. It's amazing.
Right. when you've got Hamilton played by Don Rickles, where he's like, I guess, trying to impress the upper management of the theater, and he's bringing them candy and stuff. And even when he goes and gets popcorn, he's like insulting the concessions guy who's like, hurry up, you idiot. And then he gives him the popcorn, and he leaves the theater, and then all of a sudden the stampede, just like so proud of himself for a minute. And then all of a sudden he just gets trampled by all these people. I love that whole scene.
All the pranks are great. The car lot prank where he hires all the prostitutes. And I love how they're basically like his loyal gang of prostitutes that will do anything for him throughout the film. Because I love when the prostitutes are being loud when he's trying to tell them the plan. He says, okay, settle down, prostitutes.
Right. I was going to say that line too. He's like, settle down, prostitutes. I have a plan for you where you can earn money doing no sex at all. And then they all look disappointed. And they're like, aw.
And the plan is, of course, to plant them all in the David Kochner's car lot in the trunks so that Norm Macdonald can say lines like, my goodness, I've never seen so many dead hookers in all my life.
What about later when they're like in the food testing place where they have to eat these weird brownies, and Sam is eating just like mouths full of all these brownies, and he's like, oh, these are actually pretty good. And then Norm takes like a little nibble of one, and then like they cut away and they're driving in the car, and he's like broken out in hives and like starts hallucinating Gary Coleman in hell with Satan played by Adam Sandler.
The Adam Sandler cameo just makes this film feel so complete. Like he's the last piece of the puzzle to make this like the perfect image.
You eat the pig and then you burn. What you talking about, Satan?
I love the nonsensical Gary Coleman cameo after this where he comes back again. Right. And it was really weird. I've just watched the George Foreman movie that came out this year, which I'm a big boxing fan, and I got back into watching some more 60s fights, and I was watching some Kid Norton fights and his fights with Muhammad Ali. Lo and behold, later on in the movie, when they're giving the brownies to some security officers so that they'll get hives and be distracted, they're all watching a boxing match on TV, which is Gary Coleman versus Ken Norton for some reason. Where Kid Norton punches him in the face one time and knocks him out. It's so stupid.
That is probably like one of the funniest parts of this movie too, is just seeing Gary Coleman go down being punched and just being knocked out immediately. I want to say, like, when I first saw this movie, I couldn't stop laughing at that, and it's still one of the funniest parts to me.
And after trash talking Kid Norton on top of that.
Right. Bring it. Yeah, it's just the fact that he's like so confident, and he's like this really short dude walking up to this giant boxer, and he's like, come on, bring it, and then just bam, and he goes down immediately.
It's great. More awesome 90s-ness there, where you have Gary Coleman doing a lot of comedic stuff there, well past his sitcom prime days from the 80s. You got Sandler, like you said, which really, he has to be here, and he's really why the movie got made, because he said, look, Norm Macdonald, he was just in my Billy Madison movie. This guy's great. You got to give him a movie. He needs his own movie. And I don't think this movie would have happened without that.
Now that I'm thinking about it, with Sandler and Farley, the only thing that this movie really is short is like a Steve Buscemi cameo. Like, I don't know, as somebody in the background or some little bit part, like I can just see it. I would love that. Maybe that's in the R-rated cut.
Maybe so. Oh, and speaking of people from the 90s, you have the woman who was in every Victoria's Secret catalog that I confiscated from my sister, Rebecca Romaine, who plays a bearded woman here. She always was able to poke a lot of fun at herself, which I appreciated. And of course, then she did Mystique in the X-Men movies after this. But she's the bearded lady. And the best part is she's a beautiful woman, right? All they do to her is shave her beard. So she wakes up in bed and it's beautiful Rebecca Romaine. And she feels the lack of beard on her face and screams. And it's so stupid because outside they're spray painting bearded off of her trailer. So it just says the lady. It's so dumb. I love it so much.
That is probably like the one segment of this where it's just not quite as funny to me as the rest of it. But that scene of her waking up, feeling her face being smooth and screaming is pretty great. But yeah, all the stuff with like the circus, I don't know, it just doesn't quite work as well for me, but it's still funny to a degree. I don't know. There's moments here where like even if stuff isn't like super funny, it's still amusing and doesn't like fall flat or ruin anything for me. So I wouldn't say like every single joke in here lands, but enough of them do that I don't know, I can't deny like 90% of this being hilarious.
What about the next gag, which is probably the most famous from this entire film, where they go to put fish in someone's house who's been making too much noise in a neighborhood and a dad is complaining and it turns out they're mobsters.
That is great. That is great. So I think the standout idea from this is we have a scene of just Norm and Sam. I keep saying Norm and Sam, like, a character name and an actor name, but Artie Lang and Norm Macdonald, they're holding the fish as they hear the mobsters come in. They're like, hey, does it smell like fish in here? And they're like, what is that, some kind of code?
They're going to hide fish in this house so that the house stinks so bad whoever lives there will leave. So they're planting fish very gleefully with so much joy on their faces. They're dropping fish everywhere in the house and hiding them everywhere.
And they're doing it in like such stupid ways too, where they're just like, they like I don't know if, or maybe it's later in the apartment building where they like sledgehammer a hole in the wall and then they drop a fish inside of it and then cover it with a painting.
Yeah.
But I love the long shot here where they're just like in the middle of hiding the fish, like in a vase or something. And then the mobsters walk in off screen in the other room. They're like, hey, does it smell like fish in here? And then they get into this big like gun battle where they have like grenades and machine guns going off. And the whole time you just have Norm and Artie standing there with this frozen expression on their face until finally the last explosion goes off.
Looks good.
What's the problem?
It smells like fish in here.
What is that? What was that? Some sort of signal? Huh? Is that a signel?
No.
You wearing a wire?
No, it really does smell like fish in here.
You're a damn cop, ain't you? That's it.
Show these guys what we do to cops. Say hello to the devil for me. Behind you! I've been hit! Pablo, kill them! Kill them! Make your guns bark like the devil himself! Bring in hell, you bastard! No! Sweet Jesus, he got me! Mark, over there! Grab it! I use it to cut fireworks! What you're using? Now you're killing me with that chainsaw! He took away my chainsaw, and now he's using it on me! God! Is that a hand grenade?
Good Lord. We gotta get out of here. Will you come on?
And then they're like walking out, squishing over the dead bodies. And the neighbor walks in and is like, wait, what's going on here? I told y'all to turn down that record. Oh my God. I told you to scare them away, not to kill them.
I love too the stupidity of the lines that the mobsters are saying off camera.
Oh, right.
It's total Norm Macdonald stupidity. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Well, yeah, because apparently Bob Saget had directed them. He was basically off camera for that long shot, giving them the line readings and telling them how to react to each thing. So they'd have a different expression for each like stupid thing the mobsters were saying. But then it was Norm's idea where it was like, all right, let's do another take where we just have like this frozen expression. We have this one expression on our face the whole time. And then that was the take that was used in the movie. And I think that is genius. Who else would have thought of that but Norm Macdonald? That's like really what makes that moment.
So good. And I love, Jordan, I love their office. I love the aesthetics, the late 90s aesthetics of the office that they're working out of, where it's just all these bright colors and there's like shapes everywhere. I don't know. I just like the way this movie looks. I think they film most around Toronto. But what did you think about the way their office looked, Jordan? Did you geek out on that like I did, or did you not even notice it?
No, I noticed that. It definitely has that late 90s vibe to it. Almost like it was just like a rec room of a 12-year-old in the late 90s or something. Like it was like a community rec room or something. Like, I don't know. It definitely doesn't look like your typical office because they're a revenge for hire business. So they've got to kind of shirk the norms. No pun intended.
And that leads to their next gag, where they put all the popcorn seeds in this bulldozer that's going to bulldoze this community building. And this is all because of old boy from all the movies we talked about wants a parking lot for his opera house because, of course, he's a big snob here and he's a big fan of opera. But
yes,
they put all the popcorn seeds into the bulldozer, and then, of course, they all explode and blow the bulldozer up with popcorn. But I love the stupidity of them leaving a giant trail of popcorn seeds from the crime scene all the way back to their office that the police follow.
And then they get arrested. Wasn't this a callback to, like, when they were kids, they put popcorn seeds in somebody's car from when they were kids?
Yes, it is. They pull the same prank again. They repeat a few of the pranks through the movie. Yes, that's true.
Which is kind of fun, yeah.
Yes. It's also kind of fun when they go to prison after this, Jordan.
Right. Ridiculous.
He and Artie Lang are sitting there, and he's like, you do know what happens in prison, right? And Artie Lang's like, no, what are you talking about? And then he whispers to him, and he's whispering about getting raped in prison, to which Artie Lang is like, what? I never heard about that. And then the three guys sitting across from them, the three criminals there are like, oh, come on, Norm. And he's like, ah. And then he goes off, and it's off camera, obviously, but he gets raped off screen, which would be a horrific thing, right? It's horrible, but instead this is Norm Macdonald writing this movie. So he walks back, pulling his pants up and kind of like rubbing at his butt, and then just giving them a lecture about how disrespectful it was.
You fellas have a lot of growing up to do, I'll tell you that. Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. Can you believe these characters? Way out of line, way out of line. Have a good mind to go to the warden about this. You know what hurts the most is the lack of respect. You know? That's what hurts the most. Except for the other thing. That hurts the most. But the lack of respect hurts the second most.
I just love how I keep saying ridiculous.
And the way that he's just able and willing to completely make fun of himself again and again. Where right after this, he's talking to Trailer Howard and trying to be cool. And she asks him to do something. And he says, I have to go lift weights. What?
What?
Right. At himself. Like, who would believe that I'm actually doing that? Well, now they have to go to Christopher McDonald himself because he calls them. He wants them to do a job for him, and they get tricked. And if there's one part of this movie that's not my favorite, I'd say it's whenever they go to destroy this apartment building for Christopher McDonald, because they kind of just do the same pranks, like they do the fish again. The only part I really liked from this is where we already have heard a comment about Norm Macdonald finding Sean Connery sexy, and he sees a James Bond poster. There's I think it was a From Russia with Love poster on the wall.
Yeah.
And they're trashing everything, smashing everything. Then he sees the poster and delicately rolls it up and runs off with it.
I do like how Artie Lang is the one like breaking down all the doors, and then Norm Macdonald is trying to break down the doors himself. But then he he lights a door on fire and then puts it out with a fire extinguisher and then walks through the hole. It's like his own little version. And then later he goes into the apartment of Trailer Howard's grandmother, who he thinks was running a horror house, but it's really like her knitting business or something later we find out. But then Artie Lang knocks down the door on top of Norm Macdonald.
They think that this is like a hive of villainy, and it's actually not. It's just where normal people live. Right. They've been completely duped. So they go back to Christopher McDonald to complain. They get thrown out. There's a great delay where Artie Lang walks out, kind of dusting himself off, and you're waiting for Norm Macdonald to fly out, and he doesn't. But then somehow they perfectly time him finally flying out, getting flung out. It's amazing. And then they hire these homeless men outside. We find out are not the crazy kind of homeless men. They're the sad ones. They make that delineation.
Right. You have the whole monologue from one of the homeless men. Actually, he is the same actor who played the principal in Billy Madison, which I thought was really funny. And he goes on and on about like, you know what? I used to have a life and blah, 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 blah. And then Norm Macdonald interrupts him. He's like, here's your $2.
It's like the harshest audio cut where the guy is really giving a great performance in this monologue.
Yeah.
About his self-worth. And then the way that he so harshly says, "Here's your $2," reminds me of like my 5-year-old niece. Like in the way that she would interrupt you because she is not listening to a word you're saying and she just wants her goldfish crackers or something. It's awesome.
He does the same thing later when he's like talking to them in the park. He's like going on and on and on. And then it cuts to a wide shot and they've all deserted him. And he's like, guys, wait up.
And then Norm finally breaks the news to Artie Lang that he's actually his brother, and they have a little falling out here, which actually I thought was pretty well done, because, you know, in these 90s comedies, there always has to be some kind of, like, falling out between main characters for a minute. Sometimes it's annoying, because you're like, all right, when are they going to get to that part so we can get past that part? But I didn't mind it here. It actually, I thought, was pretty well done, with the two of them very briefly falling out, and Norm, who is living with them, has to go sleep in his car. Of course, he's wearing old-timey pajamas.
And then Bobcat Goldthwait breaks into his car to steal his radio. I love how Norm is, like, smacking his lips, waking up, like, very nonchalantly, like, hey, man, hey, trying to get some sleep back here. And Bobcat's like, ah! It just runs away with the radio.
And I love also the continuity there where he wakes up later in the morning and he's freezing because the window is busted. And he looks so pathetic shivering, and it's really funny.
He looks pathetic, but he also looks like he's very badly acting that part too.
It's awesome. I also love the complete and total depravity, I can't say words, where Bob Saget, you could just see him behind the camera in the moment where they break the news about them sharing the same dad. And Artie Lang is in disbelief, to which Pop says, because there's a picture, you know, like you mentioned, of Norm Macdonald's mom, and Pop's getting it on, where he says, nah, she was there too. Who do you think took the picture? And it's so awful.
I love Norm's expression in response to that. He's like, oh.
But then, like, again, this feels like Bob Saget's stand-up routine if you've ever watched it, where it kind of gets even grosser. Not kind of. It definitely gets way worse, because then when Artie Lang and Norm make up, they're laughing about stuff that happened when they were kids, when they didn't know they were brothers, where it's about Artie Lang's sister, who it turns out is also Norm's sister, where he looked at her underwear on the jungle gym, but then it escalates to,
remember that time y'all had sex in high school?
And then also them summing up how they're brothers later on, where Norm says it's kind of a long story. And then Artie just says, my dad boned his mom. And then Norm says, okay, it's a short story.
Right. I love the way Artie says that too, where he's just like, my dad boned his mom. His soft-spoken approach sometimes was like, I live with my dad. Like, just the way he reads those lines is so soft. It's like so subtle, but it's so funny.
So the friends are reunited, the brothers are reunited, and they get Trailer Howard behind what they're going to do now. They're going to play a dirty work prank on Christopher McDonald so that they can make everything right. So, of course, he has to get his army of prostitutes in on the plan. And also he has to get Chris Farley because, yes, he is in this entire movie. He may only be in 5 or 6 minutes, but he's here for the long run. He just keeps popping up. So part of the plan is to have the prostitutes come in. But my favorite part, that just shows you everything Chris Farley can do in 30 seconds. He's got an army of skunks that he's supposed to send out because, of course, he has no nose, right? His nose got bitten off.
What does he say? He says, and they say in the land of the blind, the man with one eye is king. But in the land of the skunks, the man with no nose is king.
He goes on this huge power trip where he's just screaming and yelling at the skunks.
Sing the song, boys! Sing the song, boys! Bow and kneel before me! Jimmy! Release the skunks! Okay, I got it. I'm on it. All right. Don't let me down, boys. Run, fly! Fly away! Run! Run out! Fly!
It's absolutely insane. I also love that for no reason the town mayor is John Goodman, who just comes here for 5 seconds.
He's going to come back later in our movie connection. But yeah, he's in this for like literally 5 seconds.
Ooh, yeah, I can't wait for that. That's awesome. I also love that whenever Christopher McDonald tries to get out, which I love that it's Norm Macdonald and Christopher McDonald, but when he tries to get out, all the prostitutes are there, and Norm says, "You didn't count on my loyal army of prostitutes, did you?"
And then later when he's like, "You're ruining Don Giovanni." And Norm's like, "Don Giovanni, who's that dude?" And he's like, "The opera. You're ruining the opera." And he's like, "Oh, the opera. Yes, we are ruining that."
I love every single time he says the word dude, it's a complete mockery of the word dude.
Right.
Every time he says it.
Who's that dude? Yeah, that's the same thing he says when he's walking Kathy back to work, and Anton Phillips is like, "Kathy, get your ass back in here." And he's like, "Who's that dude?"
I also love the theater critic, who everyone is freaking out because there's skunks and prostitutes and total chaos, and Pops gets unleashed on the poor, very buxom opera singer. It's all crazy and everyone's running, but not him. He's sitting there saying, "Oh, the atmosphere of squalor and despair. It's magnificent. This is the greatest interpretation of Don Giovanni ever." And I really thought back to my days getting my film degree and watching a movie in class where everyone would be like, "That was the stupidest garbage I've seen." And just me being the contrarian asshole being like, "You didn't get it, man."
You were that guy.
That was on a whole other level. Yes.
I love how he stays to the very end. He stands up clapping. He's so into it.
Like when the skunks come out, has like 7 philosophical layers that he breaks down. Like of what they mean, what the skunks mean, and really it's just Chris Farley has unleashed skunks on everyone because that's what happened. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
I also love how the stupid dog, the stupid Chihuahua, gets sexually assaulted by one of the skunks. But it's the dumbest looking sock. Like they really want you to know this dog wasn't hurt, so it's like the dumbest looking sock puppet skunk. Just moving behind the dog. It's so dumb.
It's so good.
Yes, because the skunks are real earlier.
Right. I think they're even like kind of CG when they have the wide shot of them running around, or maybe they're like composited in or something. I don't know. They definitely look fake-ish, but in a different way in that moment. But then, yeah, later when it's humping the dog, it's definitely a puppet, and it looks so stupid.
Yes. And I'd love to how just like everything's fine after this. That Christopher McDonald gets exposed because Norm had accidentally recorded him earlier, giving his entire evil plan. And even though like Artie Lang just punched a cop in the face and they just did all this illegal stuff, like everything gets sorted out. Well, not perfectly. So some things don't get sorted out perfectly.
I love the note to selves on his tape recorder that come back when they're trying to cue up the Travis Cole thing where he accidentally recorded him, where he's like, "Note to self, get wart cream for giant wart on ass." And he's like, no, a little bit past that.
Man, I'm looking at my Audacity file as I'm recording this, and I'm peaking my recording so much because of laughter.
I'm pretty sure like 90% of this episode is just us quoting this movie and laughing about it. So it's all good.
So awesome. So
good.
I love that you get the conclusion to Farley's story, which has been running here, which is a Saigon hooker bit his nose off. Then he sees her again because she's one of the hookers in Norm's group of prostitutes. And then he gets back together with her at the end. And they're just yelling and berating each other. They're awful for each other.
As he drives away, she bites his like new nose off. "Oh, you bit my new nose off." Which we didn't mention. He gets back with her because earlier when they're doing the live TV commercial, Jimmy is sitting at the bar and he's watching the TV and he's like, "That's the Saigon whore who bit my nose off." And he runs down to the car dealership. Somehow he's there like in a few minutes.
And it's totally believable that he ran all the way down there in 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, yeah, because even though Chris Farley is a man of large stature, that dude can run. He can freaking do a cartwheel. Like, he's so full of energy.
Yep, college athlete. I love, too, that he has the line where after she's yelling at him and he kind of talks aside to Norm, he's like, because he yells back at her and he's like, "The rooster has to keep the hen in line."
Right. And she's like, "Come on, Jimmy, we have to go." And he's like, "I'm talking to my friend here."
It's like a goodbye to Farley in a way, because it really is his last movie scene. This is it. He died 6 months before the movie was released. This is the last thing he filmed, and it's probably the most fitting cinematic goodbye possible.
Isn't that kind of bittersweet? Yeah, that we actually do get that shot of him driving away in the car, and we hear their dialogue, and the car is swerving and everything. But yeah, it's like the final shot of Farley. It's kind of nuts that we get that. It's a gift.
It is. And then you get the end of the voiceover as now Norm drives away with Traylor Howard in the car. And we didn't really talk about Chevy Chase. He's got a lot of deadpan lines as this gambling addict doctor who owes $50,000, and that's who they're raising the money to give to. He has more and more casts on his body because his bookie just keeps beating him ruthlessly.
I do love his deadpan line where they're like, "What happened to your foot, Doc?" And he's like, "What I don't understand is if a bookie cuts off your toe because they haven't paid his money, you'd think the debt would be paid at that point, right? But no, you still owe him the money."
Yeah, he did great there. I like the story, too, that Artie Lang was scared to work with him because he'd heard some bad stories of the way that Chevy Chase was on a set. And then they ended up becoming like really good friends through filming this, which I thought was funny. But what I thought was even funnier is the ending of the voiceover as Norm's driving away, where he's like, yeah, everything was happily ever after, except with the doctor. The bookies beat him to death anyway, so he's dead.
That's it. Bye.
Yes. The "that's it" bye redeems the entire voiceover as a concept.
Right. Yeah, just it's so informal the way he does all of the voiceover. And there's no feeling for Dr. Farthing at all. He's just like, so he's dead. There's no remorse or grief there at all.
It's the same tone as "here's your $2."
Exactly. Oh, man, I love this movie so much.
Me too. Just giving you my score. So I went and looked, and I had given this a 7 back in the day. Watching it the second time through of my viewings now, look, I do not care how lowbrow this movie is. I do not care how stupid it is. I think this movie is hilarious. I laughed so many times. Almost every single line in this film is quotable, eminently quotable. I just love this movie, man. This is an 8 out of 10 for me. I'm going to give this an 8.
Yeah, I'm right up there with you. I gave Screwed 3.5 out of 5. So, I mean, obviously I love this even more, even though I love Screwed a lot. Didn't even mention Dave Chappelle hitting everybody with a desk lamp throughout that movie.
That's such a dumb gag, but I did like that too.
That was really dumb. And now at the end, he hit somebody with a lava lamp. Like, that's the final straw. But anyway, yeah, Dirty Work, much more enjoyable than Screwed, I'd say. Much funnier, even though I love both these Norm Macdonald movies. So I'd have to give it a 4 out of 5.
I feel like I could go back to this one for comfort forever. It has so many things I like in it. And then, like we said about Farley, I mean, it's the same for Norm Macdonald now. If you're a fan of Bob Saget's humor outside of Full House, it's the same for him. They're all gone, but they left an eternal document here of their genius, of their stupid, brilliant genius. And I'm very thankful this movie exists.
I mean, we laughed so much talking about this just now. I almost feel bad just giving this a 4 out of 5. Like, I almost feel like this should be a 5 out of 5 movie, even though it's so lowbrow. It's like, It's so ridiculous to give this kind of movie that kind of score, but I don't know. It feels like it deserves it just for all the history I have with this movie and how much joy I get out of it.
It does, man. I was thinking, I gave it that 7 out of 10, and I was talking about getting a film degree before, where you would probably really look down on this film, or you'd be like, it's okay to have a little fun at the cinema every now and then.
Right.
I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5. No, like, forget that. If I can watch this movie again and again and get so much enjoyment out of it, it's an 8, man.
Yeah. For sure. It's up there.
Right on.
Well, movie connection, like I mentioned earlier, we are connecting Jurassic Park and Dirty Work. So I think, I don't know, what about you? The dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, that was really a revenge for hire business in some way. Like John Hammond just had it out for all these people. I don't know. But speaking of John, so John Goodman was the mayor in Dirty Work. He was also in the movie Always, directed by Steven Spielberg, who directed Jurassic Park. And another connection, Norm Macdonald was in Dr. Dolittle with apparently a monkey named Crystal the Monkey, who, guess what, played the monkey in the recent Spielberg movie, The Fabelmans. So there you go. 2 connections.
Nice shot. I'll add a third to this, too. We'll make it a trifecta. The porn gag in this film, men in black who like to have sex with each other. Obviously, a porn spin on the movie Men in Black, which was produced by Amblin Entertainment, a.k.a. Steven Spielberg Productions. Steven Spielberg directed Jurassic Park. Triple connected.
Triple connected. Nice. All right. So, are you ready for our trivia battle?
Hold it! Pop quiz, hot shot.
All right, so this time for trivia battle, I have a little game called Playin' Dirty, and this is movies with dirty in the title. So I'm going to ask you a question. I actually wrote my own questions this time, Nick. Aren't you proud of me?
I'm shocked.
You are shocked, I'm sure. All right, what do you have?
Roald Dahl adaptations is my theme.
Oh, nice.
And I know the answer to all of these. I'm going to follow that old rule from back in the day. I know the answer to all of these. I just thought of things that I knew about Roald Dahl adaptations, and I wrote these questions based on that. And then I fact-checked myself to make sure that the answers were right. And they were.
Sweet.
Also, there's one and possibly a second punishment that we have for our next episode, which is a patron request. I'm going to watch those whether I win or lose.
Yeah, I'm going to watch those if I win or lose either. So we'll just do this for pride's sake. And hopefully, well, for some patrons or some fans of the show, hopefully I lose because apparently Chaz is enjoying that running gag of Filmshake. But for my sake, I hope I win one of these days.
It's good when you're bad, Jordan.
It's good when I'm bad. All right, so first question for Playing Dirty. What year was the movie Dirty Pretty Things released? Was it A, 2002, B, 2001, C, 2000, or D, 2003?
That's a pretty good movie, by the way. I should throw that out there. That actress really had her time in the sun. That was
Audrey Tautou?
2002, yeah.
There you go. You got it. I did enjoy that movie a lot and was a big Audrey Tautou fan back in the day.
What happened to her?
I don't know. She was in quite a good bit of stuff in the early 2000s and then just kind of went off the map. I assume she's still doing good work in France, but just maybe not as many notable titles that have crossed over.
If that had been your question, you would have stumped me because I would have said, I don't know. I thought she was just an apparition of the early 2000s.
I guess so.
All right. Jordan, I feel like these are easy. You got to get at least 3 out of 5 of these.
I'll try.
All right. Which frequent stop-motion animator directed 1996's James and the Giant Peach? Was it A, Henry Selick, B, Tim Burton, C, Phil Tippett, or D, Nick Park?
I believe it was Tim Burton, but but Henry Selick is also a good choice, so I think I'll go with Henry Selick.
All right, fine. It's Henry Selick.
Okay.
Not Tim Burton. Good thing you didn't guess Tim Burton.
Good thing I didn't.
Oh, man, I'm piquing my audacity again.
Well, those two are kind of hand in hand, right? Because Henry Selick actually directed Nightmare Before Christmas. And so even though that's like a Tim Burton story, Tim Burton concept. So I know Tim Burton has some connection, maybe helped produce James and the Giant Peach. But yeah, ultimately directed by Henry Selick.
Yeah, and if you ask a lot of people who directed Nightmare, they're going to say Tim Burton.
Tim Burton.
Unfortunately, Henry Selick is a bit unsung, but yep, it was Henry Selick, Jordan. Great job on that being your first guess.
I should get points for knowing all that other backstory at least. All right, let's see. So, question number 2 for Playing Dirty. Dirty Dancing was released in 1987. What year is the film set in? Was it A, 1959, B, 1963, C, 1962, or D, 1961?
I used to joke around with my sister that this was the girl version of Star Wars. Because all my girlfriends love Dirty Dancing like I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I've never watched the whole movie. I got to admit, every time my sister put it on, I would do something else, and I just remember the ending really well. I'm going to guess, since I said 2002 for the last one, I'm going to say 1962 for this one.
Close, but no cigar. It was 1963.
When JFK was assassinated.
Yeah, I think there is a line of narration or dialogue in the movie that talks about like this was before JFK was assassinated and right around before the Beatles came through or right when they came through, something like that. But yeah, I watched it not too long ago and it was enjoyable. It was worth a watch.
As much as I love Swayze, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could go back and watch it. Because, I mean, I've never watched it. I don't know.
It's got a lot of sexy Swayze in it, man.
Yeah.
You're missing out.
My wife is in that group of... Actually, this used to be a gag where I would say this in high school and college. The one stipulation I have for a girlfriend is that she doesn't like Dirty Dancing, which was like an inside joke, because literally every girl I liked loved Dirty Dancing, and my wife does too. So
yeah, this actually was probably a reason why I didn't like Swayze for a long time, just on the basis of everybody, all the girls that I knew loved this movie and thought Swayze was so hot and everything. So it's just like, on principle, I think he sucks, even though I never had seen this movie. Wasn't super familiar with a lot of his other work, but he's actually really good in this. The dancing, if you're into that, is pretty incredible. He's got it going on.
It's the Leo principle. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same principle, for sure.
For me, it was, as I've said many times about Swayze, it was Ghost that finally won me over into realizing how amazing he was and that I should try to emulate Swayze instead of hating him.
And you should also wear a Nixon mask and rob banks.
Right, yeah.
And be a surfer.
Find your zen. Find that place. Find your Point Break.
All right, what's your next question?
Who directed the 1971 classic Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Was it A, Mel Stewart, B, Roald Dahl, C, Gene Wilder, or D, David Saxon?
Was it Mel Stewart?
Yeah!
Nice.
Ding, ding.
Nice. All right, next question for me. And this is probably my favorite question that I came up with, and I can just hear you now, like, Jordan, you son of a bitch. All right, so 2001's Joe Dirt in the title there, features a notable cameo from none other than Christopher Walken. When riffing on the "You talking to me" scene from Taxi Driver, what does Walken's Clem say he'll stab you with? So he's like, "You talking to me? You talking to me? You talk to me like that again, I'm going to stab you with a..." All right, so what does he say? A, a pair of scissors. B, a soldering iron. C, a number 2 pencil. D, a rusty blade. Or E, his dick.
A pair of scissors.
And it was a soldering iron. I'll stab you with a soldering iron. Again, another random line that always lives in my head from this really stupid movie, Christopher Walken imitating Robert De Niro.
I don't think I've ever seen Joe Dirt in its entirety, which is crazy because the parts I have seen were right up my alley of dumb comedy. So I should watch all of that at some point.
Yeah, you should. For a dumb comedy fan, you should definitely watch it.
All right. Well, I guess if you get this one right, you win.
Oh, by the way, did you like my E choice there? I'll stab you with my dick, which was a reference to Airheads.
I didn't even catch it. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Very nice. All right. This E.T. scribe / Harrison Ford ex-wife wrote Jordan's favoritely titled Spielberg film, 2016's The BFG.
My favoritely titled. Big fucking giant.
Was it A, Erica Todd, B, Melissa Matheson, C, Ursula Le Guin, or D, Malia Scotch Marmo?
I wish I had a phone of somebody on this. I don't know. Was it Melissa Matheson?
That is correct. Harrison Ford's. Rest in peace, Melissa Matheson, but his wife before, his current wife, Callista Flockhart.
Well, let's see here. What are we at here? You've gotten 1 right and 2 wrong.
Yeah, Jordan, I think you've gotten 2 right here. Or even 3 right, since you definitely said Henry Selick before.
I definitely got that first question right, so yeah.
Since you got that first question right, Jordan, forget your questions. Let me just see if you can go 5 out of 5 here.
All right.
Which you've never done before. Like maybe your Filmshake off, when Chaz came on, rejuvenated your powers and gave you trivia power.
Maybe so.
It was all that amphibian DNA. All right, here we go, Jordan. You can do it. 1996's Matilda is a childhood favorite for many people my wife's age.
Yes.
Since I brought my wife up before. Which One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest star directed it?
Ooh.
Was it A, Christopher Lloyd, B, Danny DeVito, C, William Redfield, or D, Brad Dourif?
I believe it was Danny DeVito.
Yeah, Jordan 4 for 4. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Living with my mom has done me good. I live with my mom. No. Can I ask you my other question, though?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right, because this was also one of my favorites. And let's just say I've won this thing at this point, right?
Sure.
All right. So question number 4 of Playing Dirty. Sonic Youth, bringing in some music here, released a song called Dirty Boots in 1990 on the album Goo. They also released an album named Dirty in 1992. Which director who ties back into dirty work directed multiple music videos for the band? Was it A. Tamara Davis, B. Spike Jonze, C. Michel Gondry, or D. Gus Van Sant?
I don't know. Spike Jonze?
Ties back into dirty work somehow?
Oh, Tamara Davis?
There you go. Because she directed Billy Madison and Adam Sandler is in Dirty Work. Bada bing, bada boom.
Good old Tamara. All right, well, Jordan, I feel like you were stalling a little bit there because you're nervous about going 5 for 5, but I have faith in you. I think you can do this.
All right.
This is the hardest question, but I think you can get it. Number 5. Which British television star played Mr. Stringer in one of the only films to scare the hell out of young Nicholas as a child? 1990's The Witches. The other movie that scared the hell out of me was Return to Oz. So thanks a lot, Jim Henson. That and The Witches scared the crap out of me. Those are the only movies that have ever scared me. But who played Mr. Stringer in The Witches, Jordan? Was it A. Rowan Atkinson, B. John Cleese, C. Eric Idle, or D. Hugh Laurie?
Was it John Cleese?
Oh, damn it, Jordan. You were so close. It was Rowan Atkinson.
Rowan Atkinson?
Mr. Bean / Blackadder
Played a
himself.
scary man?
Well, no, he's not scary. Frickin' Angelica Houston is scary.
Oh, I see.
Terrifying.
Well, I was so close.
You almost had it. I have faith that one day you'll reach that 5 out of 5 mountain, Jordan.
One day. Can only hope. But I still won.
You did. You won the Pride War.
Let's see. You want to hear my 5th question just for fun?
What you got?
Who directed 1971's Dirty Harry? Was it A. Don Siegel, B. Clint Eastwood, C. Dean Reisner and Clint Eastwood, or D. Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood?
I know that Don Siegel directed Dirty Harry, but I don't know if Clint Eastwood went in behind him and did extra stuff. I love those Dirty Harry movies. I like all 5 of them.
Yeah, I knew you were a fan.
I feel like you like to try to trick me. I'm going to guess Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood, unless you're making me overthink the answer.
I could be. No, that is correct. Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood.
All right,
there you
good.
go. Got
Very
it.
nice. Man, for patrons, we recently did a Patreon-only episode on our favorite 70s movies. I feel like there were so many I forgot. I didn't say Superman, which is one of the formative movies, the Richard Donner Superman, one of the formative movies of my youth. I didn't say Dirty Harry, which also very formative, not when I was a kid, when I was in high school. God, all those movies, he has great quotes in all of them. I love all of them. So I wish I would have said Dirty Harry, too. There's just too many good ones. The 70s are too good. Not as good as the 90s, but
I just gave you an option to talk about it with my 5th question there. So
thank you, friend.
You're welcome.
Speaking of talking, there is so much talking in the movie that we're covering in our next episode.
That's right. So patron Anthony has requested that we cover our first Kevin Smith film. What's it going to be?
It's going to be Clerks from 1994. Very low budget indie film. That will be the main topic. But the punishment movies, we're just going to go all out. There's a Clerks 2, but hey, Clerks 3 just came out. I heard that one's actually good. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I will see it.
Yeah, I've heard multiple people tell me that they cried watching Clerks 3 somehow.
Holy crap.
That's interesting. Yeah, I am curious to rewatch Clerks. It's been a long while. I'm curious to rewatch it. I mean, it doesn't have Jason Lee in it, so it's not a true Kevin Smith film for me. But that's probably sacrilege for most Kevin Smith fans who are like, Clerks is the holy grail, the debut, the end-all be-all of a lot of Kevin Smith fans, I would say. But yeah. I think we'll go into it next time. But yeah, I want to say my first Kevin Smith film was Mallrats, or maybe Chasing Amy. But I just have a soft spot for Jason Lee because he used to be a skateboarder, and I love that dude.
I know that's why you like him, Jordan.
Right, exactly.
Your skateboarder bias.
That's right. Damn rollerbladers. Bringing my skateboarder bias back in.
That's right. So it's a Clerks-a-Palooza. We haven't covered a lot of the smaller indie movies from the 90s, and there's so many of them. We're going to do this show forever until infinity if we can live that long, so we'll eventually cover them all.
At least into our 90s.
That's right. We have to live into our 90s so we can do the 90s Movies podcast to confuse people at that point, whoever's still alive by then.
Right. And you're going to be in your 90s before I'm in my 90s, so we'll get there.
We'll get there.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed Dirty Work. Definitely go and watch it if you haven't already, and watch Screwed at my recommendation, if you so dare. But yes, thank you to all our patrons. If you want to join us in supporting the show, at least $3 a month, you can get bonus episodes. Check us out on patreon.com/filmshake. And you can find us on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you call it nowadays at 90s Movies Pod. You can email us at filmshakepodcast@gmail.com. And we'll catch you next time for more Filmshake.
Take it easy.
Oh,
it's so good.
So where does that lead us to?